Hi there, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the OSD of the flagship TX RZ3100. So the first option is up for us is actually the input and output assignment. So we'll move over and we'll select number 1, which is the TV output. Now because the RZ3100 is actually fitted with 2 HDMI outputs, we've got a couple of options available to ourselves, which means if you're running dual displays or a flat screen and a projector, you can switch between them without any problem at all. Now, the 3100 can actually upscale 1080p signals from the HDMI to 4K. But what I would actually recommend doing is trying it out to see if there's a picture improvement or not. Because depending on what type of panel you have, the processing inside the screen may be better than the processing inside the AVR. Now, if you're not using the secondary HDMI output to run to a projector using a sort of dual system in the same room, then what you can actually do is set the second HDMI out as a zone 2. So you can run an independent feed at the same time from a different source to another room. And depending where you are in the world, we've actually allowed for multiple languages on the on-screen display. And there's only minor differences between the North American and the European and Asian models. The HDMI input is really self-explanatory. There's only really one thing to remember, that the HDMI on the front of the unit is fixed to the aux input button. The rest of the HDMIs you can actually assign to any of the inputs, as you can see on screen. The same is also true with the other analog legacy video inputs. The component and the composite video can be assigned to any of the physical buttons on the front, but you do have to make sure there is no HDMI selected on that particular input. The reason for this is HDMI is king always, without exception. The 3100 will also output those analog signals via the HDMI, but it won't upscale them. So you'll just get an HDMI version on the output of what you've put in on the analog or legacy connections. And it's a repeat for the digital and analog audio inputs. They're all fully assignable, for the exception of the phono input on the analog in, that's fixed to the phono button on the front of the unit. Now the RZ3100 is a full-blown 7.1.4 AV receiver with twin subwoofer outputs. Now you can use the auto mic setup to run through everything, but sometimes you might need to pop into this menu to actually make sure everything is perfectly correct. And the 3100 allows you to select between Dolby Atmos up-firing speakers and whether you've got them on the side channels or the back channels, or alternatively you can use downward firing in ceiling speakers. And I really do advise you coming into this menu and actually setting this correctly, which will make the time delays and the arrival times from the speakers to you absolutely correct, and therefore giving you a much more immersive system, which will in turn make the movie that much more enjoyable. And it's the same again for the crossover menu. The auto configuration should have done this correctly, but just occasionally it might have been fooled a little bit by a particular room setup. So it's always good just to go in there and make sure the settings are correct for your particular system in your particular environment. And it's pretty much the same here with the speaker distance. You just need to check it to make sure there's no sort of acoustic anomaly that's been thrown up in the room. And from my experience, it tends to be the sub, if there's going to be any problems at all. And it's either way under or way over. Don't worry, I'm not going to put you through the extremely loud and annoying level calibration tones. All I'm going to say is if you are going to go into this menu, please do it right and use a calibrated SPL meter. But as I've said all the way through this particular section, the auto microphone setup would have already done this for you. And it's only been on the rarest of occasions that I've actually heard it be off on the auto setup. This part of the menu will only actually be available to you if you've selected the Dolby Atmos up-firing speakers. And all you actually have to do is to measure from the speaker to the ceiling. That's it. And then you turn the AccuReflex on and the processor will calculate the correct delay times from the speaker to the ceiling and the arrival point to you. The Equalizer settings give you 3 presets. And what these presets actually allow you to do is to tailor the EQ curves on groups of speakers. So the front is the main left and right. The center, as it's a singular channel, is only the center. The height 1, height 2, surrounds and surround backs are all ganged together. The left and right are included as one. Now, if you've got the equipment to do so, i.e. a test tone generator and a real-time analyzer, you can actually make quite accurate measurements and readings and tailor the sound even further from the auto EQing system. Or alternatively, you could actually do them by ear. So for example, you want to set up your own late night mode and you just want to enhance the dialogue from the center channel. You could just go into the center EQ and bump up the frequencies where they have female and male vocal range. And then when you want to actually use the EQ, you can go into the quick menu on the remote control and you can then choose if you want to use a preset or not. But the EQ presets give you the ability to actually manipulate the sound in the particular room and environment that you're in. Now, if you like using the THX post-processing, there's a few bits in here that we need to address. The rear speaker spacing, you need to set that correctly. And if you've got a THX certified subwoofer, you turn that on definitely. And then the BGC is a boundary gain compensation. And basically, if you have the sub in a corner of a room or along the edge of a room, turn it on. If you don't, turn it off. And then the loudness plus section allows you to get rich deep bass at low volumes. So this is more of an adjuster taste to see whether you like the result or not. I'd try it, turn it on and off. Now the EQ for standing waves, this sort of goes in hand with the other presets of the EQing. And you're only really going to get the benefits of using this if you understand what standing waves are and the way they work. If you're not sure, then just do a Google search or go onto YouTube and find out what standing waves are and how these 3 preset filters can help you get rid of them. Here we have options on how you want to manipulate mono or multiplex signals and the routing that they will take within your system. The option within the Dolby menu is a loudness management. This helps you out at lower sound levels. And then within the DTS option, we have an auto mode and you can turn this on or off. And then the LFE level option allows you to manipulate the levels of the incoming LFE signals. And then our last set of options within this module is the volume. And this is where you can change it from absolute to relative on the display, different muting levels. You can fix a maximum volume, a power on volume, and an independent headphone level. And that brings us onto the source option. And these are input specific, so we will need to make the changes per input as we go through. So the IntelliVolume is sort of a volume control for the input, and this is per input across the whole of the back. So if you've got a CD player, for example, and a satellite or cable box, and if you were lucky enough to be able to get the same content at the same time and switch between them, there would be differences in volume. Now what the IntelliVolume allows you to do is to adjust up or down the input signal, so it then allows you to switch between inputs and you don't get any leaps or dips in volume when you switch between the inputs. The name edit is pretty self-explanatory. On every single input you can go in and you can change the label. Now this will appear on the front of the actual unit and actually on the on-screen display of your TV. The audio select option allows you to choose what type of signal comes into that input, whether it's HDMI audio, coaxial optical, or whether it's analog. And now we're going to take a look at the hardware and see what changes can be made and what we need to adjust to get the best out of the 3100. The HDMI CEC can sometimes be a bit of a headache for people. And that's mainly because different manufacturers call it different things. For example, Panasonic call it the Viera Link, Samsung call it AnyNet Plus. So you can see why people get confused. But it all does essentially the same thing. That's allowing two-way communications between the devices to allow power control, lip sync, and making sure things are in the state where they need to be. Now I will say not everyone is created equally. So depending on brand you have and model you have within the range will dictate what options and flexibility you have within the HDMI CEC control area. The networking menu is where you can set everything up, whether it's hardwired or wireless. This is where you do it. Now you've also have the option to set the friendly name. This is what the actual AVR is called on your network within this menu, and I would highly recommend you set an AirPlay password. This makes things a lot easier and a lot more secure for you when you're streaming music. Within the Bluetooth menus, you've got the option to delete all of the pairing information, along with the option to actually turn the Bluetooth off if this is something that you don't actually use. We've also equipped the 3100 with essentially a sleep timer and an auto standby. This will be activated when it doesn't actually detect a signal for approximately 20 minutes. But this is really important if you're controlling the 3100 from an app or a control system that runs on the network. You must leave the network standby in the on position, because if you don't, when you put the AVR into standby, you won't be able to communicate it until you physically go to the front of the unit and turn it back on again. The 12-volt trigger control is selectable, and you can either have it to run when you have the main AVR on, or alternatively you can have it come on zone 2 or zone 3. Now the works with SONOS is actually quite self-explanatory. You can now add a SONOS system with the 3100 and it will act as one of the zones, controlling the volume up and down, and it will automatically switch over to a specific input in these settings when you activate the 3100 as a zone on your SONOS system. Now if you decided you are actually going to use the multi-zone, multi-room side of the 3100, then this is a good place to come, that you can actually set your output levels. You can also set a maximum volume, and you can set a power on volume. That way you're not going to make anybody jump when you turn a zone on because it's too loud for that particular time. So these options allow you to set some specific parameters that happen every single time. Now within the miscellaneous menu, there's only one thing that I really want to concentrate on here, and that's this, which is a new option, the Preamp Mode. Now if you're going to decide you're going to be using the 3100 as a preamp, then you can, and that's no problem at all, like a lot of other amplifiers. But what the 3100 will allow you to do is to actually turn off the relevant amplifier that you don't actually need to use. So this gives you a whole host of benefits. Obviously the first benefit is the amplifier you've just connected. Secondly, everything generates its own noise. So one less amplifier inside is going to improve the pre-signal just a little bit more. So the actual options you have is the main left and right and center, and all of the channels. And that's about it for the menu walkthrough. I hope you've enjoyed it and it's helped you out a bit. If you've liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. It makes all the difference. Also, hit the subscribe button and be updated whenever we release a new video. It really does make a difference. And I'd look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Take care. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.